Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. In this video is to bring you a closer look at the Kaba Ilco number 45-2-3-04-10B-0. That's a really odd part number, but we're going to talk about how that part number is arrived at. But the bottom line is it's a double cylinder deadbolt, less the cylinders. You can order Kaba Ilco deadbolts in lots of different configurations, and that's why the part number is broken up the way it is. One of those part numbers means less cylinders. And why would you want a deadbolt less cylinders? Well, because you're supplying your own. And while you might think, well, why would I ever want to do that? Well, you may not. You probably wouldn't. So this might be the wrong deadbolt for you to look at. But the bottom line is, imagine if you have some unusual mortise cylinder in terms of a keyway. You might have a UL 437, restricted key system that you have mortise cylinders, and you want to turn it into a double cylinder deadbolt. You can do that with the Kaba Ilco deadbolt platform. I don't know why this client is doing that on this job. I'm looking at his paperwork, what they're using for their cylinders, but reusing the old ones, or again, some sort of unusual keyway. And not many people know about Kaba Ilco deadbolts, but the very platform is such that they make them in, single cylinder and double cylinder. Obviously, you do then employ standard mortise cylinders, of which Kaba Ilco is a major manufacturer of those. And the point of this deadbolt is it's modular, meaning the back set or the type of latch bolt, whether it's single or double cylinder, and the cylinders applied in those instances when they're used can all be swapped in and out. As long as you have the right cam on the back of your standard 1 in 5/32 mortise cylinder, it's going to work. If you have mortise cylinders that are Medico, or if you have something very unusual, like maybe an ASA mortise cylinder, you might have something garden variety, like a Schlage C or a Kwikset, and you want the high-quality Kaba deadbolt. This is great. This is a relatively low-profile deadbolt that goes on the door, and I would even argue you could make it even shorter to the door. But let's go over what this is. So remember, this is a double-cylinder deadbolt without the mortise cylinder, so there are no mortise cylinders. You have the cylinder collars, or the cylinder rings. It's a double cylinder, so one's going to go on each side of the door. Your cylinder will go inside of here. You may or may not need a cylinder collar that would come with your cylinder, or you would order it separately. It's going to include, in this part of the video, ignore the Allen wrench. It's going to include these wave washers that are here, and the wave washers go inside of the cylinder, and as you cylinder collar, and as you thread the cylinders, that wave washer will become compressed so that you can keep the collar actually tight to the face of the door. So a couple of cylinder collars. This is the 10B finish, oil rubbed bronze, and that's the finish that we're looking at here. Okay. Dimensional property of this. Diameter, about 2.5 inch. Projection off the face of the door. Yeah, it's not even 9/16, so it's very shallow off the face of the door, the projection. Doesn't stick off the face of the door very much. Put those aside. Then we're going to have the latch bolt. And here is our latch bolt. Grade 1 latch bolt, 1 inch projection on the throw. The back set of this latch bolt, it's buried in the part number, but this is a 2 3/8 latch bolt. And we're going to talk about an important reason why Kaba Ilco deadbolts are important regarding latch bolts and back sets as well. Then you're going to have the chassis of the lock. Actually, forgive me, I don't want to name this item wrong, and I have certainly over the years known and then forgotten and then known again. It's called the cylinder housing. Okay, so this is the business end of the entire operation. This goes into the door, okay, and into this item is going to insert your latch bolt. Okay. Okay, so there is this slotted preparation. There are 2 set screws, and then there's a horizontal preparation here. That's the outside of the door, or towards the edge. The backside does not have the set screws or the horizontal preparation. Once this goes into the door, you'll then feed the latch bolt into that assembly until it stops. And that's how that goes together. Okay. At that point, this is basically applied, installed onto the door. You'll have a couple of screws that are going to attach to get that secured, the cylinder housing to the latch bolt secured together. You're just to, not go into the installation instructions just yet, but at this point, you will, with your cylinder collars, you'll thread your cylinders in. Then that long Allen wrench goes down into these two holes, and that's where they tighten those set screws into the edge of the mortise cylinder. So anyway, your cylinder housing is up next. I wanted to at least put it in context. Then there's nothing other than some miscellaneous hardware. The washers I've mentioned, the Allen wrench I just mentioned, the two screws I just mentioned, these plates here and here, they're meant to go onto the back of your mortise cylinder. So now in your mind's eye, imagine your mortise cylinder. Look at the back of the mortise cylinder, there's a cam that's there. As you rotate the key, that's the thing that will move. It's what forces the latch bolt to throw and retract. You would want to remove the two little screws, and you need a very small screwdriver, like a 0.5 Phillips. Don't quote me on that, but it's small. You'll then put that cap right on top of the mortise cylinder cam. Don't remove the cam. Two screws come out, leave the cam there. Put that on top of there, and then put the screws in. And what that does is, imagine your mortise cylinder. You can look right down through the center of that. You can look out through the back of that mortise cylinder. If you had an otoscope, which is a piece of equipment locksmiths routinely use, you'd be able to see quite clearly down in there. Well, the bottom line is, theoretically, that cap is there to prevent someone from inserting a specialized tool down in there so that they can manipulate the latch bolt. So that's what those caps are for. You'll definitely want to use those. There's no reason not to. Okay, so definitely use those. It is a concern to the point where the manufacturer actually provides those caps. And I don't know of anyone who's ever bypassed the deadbolt by inserting a tool down through the cylinder plug to manipulate the latch bolt on this lock, but I'm quite sure that it is, any locksmith looking at a Kaba Ilco deadbolt in a lockout scenario for their client, yeah, it's, they're going to do that rather than drill the door out. You'll have a faceplate for your latch bolt. Again, this is oil rub bronze, just the faceplate. Then the last thing you're going to have is going to be your strike, and the strike's going to be 2 1/4 tall. 2 3/4 tall. Very typical and common. You'll have your security reinforcer behind here. You know what? This warrants taking out of the package because there's the right way to install this, and then there's the wrong way. And if you're anything like me, you'll do the wrong thing first, and then realize, why didn't that work? Okay, that's why. Okay, so you have your strike. That's going to go into the frame, obviously, or the inactive edge, inactive door edge if it's a pair. 2 3/4, 1.1 security plate behind it. You're going to notice that there are 4 holes. There are 4 screws. These 2 long screws. Then there are 2 short screws. Okay, they're obviously assuming this is going down to a hollow metal door because, well, no, forgive me, they've not. They're combination screws, machine thread and wood thread. That'll work on either a wood frame or a metal frame without any trouble. Now, why the 4 holes? Well, the 2 bigger screws, they go down into those 2 holes. Well, that part's obvious. Okay, that's what it's going to look like. But you can install it this way or this way. You want to install that so that the 2 larger screws are towards the face of the stop, towards the center of the frame, away from the door rabbet. Because you have your frame, well, behind, so let's say that this is 4 9/16, that dimension. Here's the stud behind it. Let's say that is 3.5 inch, okay? When you put your strike on here, you want that over in this area so that when you run the screws in, they're towards the center of the frame so that the long screws actually hit the stud rather than go through and not hit the stud. Okay, so that's why those are like that. And when we switch to the screen view, I'll illustrate that so that's a little more obvious. Be absolutely sure that you are properly pre-drilling the holes for these screws because that's an opportunity to really split the frame. When you measure for the size of the drill bit that you need, you would use a caliper and measure the root diameter of the screw. You know, not the threads, just the root of the body. And then logic says, you know, roughly use 80 or 85% of that dimension, depending on whether it's hardwood or softwood. Hardwood, you'll want a little bigger hole. So whatever your caliper tells you, take 85% of that, and that should be the size of what you would want to do. I was taught that it would be the root diameter. Admittedly, that might be a little too loose according to convention that I've heard, you know, subsequently. But make sure that it's pre-drilled. I find that a wire index or wire drill size is the best companion when it comes to drilling holes. Fractional sizes are great, but a wire size is much more close per increment so that you can really get to a nice size that you want. You know, yeah, you have to convert a size 17 to the fractional size, but, you know, if you have a wire drill bit indexed, you know, it probably has the conversion there. Maybe it does. Okay, the other thing that's going to be in the box will be installation instructions and a template. Those are linked to down below this video. Let's switch to the screen view now and take a closer look. Okay, this is the item that we are looking at. Kaba Ilco, the part number, which we're going to dissect, so we won't get too stuck in that right now. Double cylinder deadbolt, less Mortise cylinder, oil rub bronze. The plain language details are here. Oil rub bronze, double cylinder, 2 3/8, 1 inch front on the face of the latch bolt. Standard bolt, it is heavy duty. Cylinder not included. Cylinders. Fits doors 1 3/8 to 1 3/4. Let's talk about that. That is not accurate, not at all. I have, and you'll understand why when we take a look at the installation instructions. I've done these on 3.5 inch thick doors. And you'll see it when we look at the installation instructions. The only thing that determines what you can use this on in terms of door thickness is the length of the cylinder that you can bring. I had a client who owns, I have a client, and that client owns a handful of bar restaurants in, you know, a couple of, you know, one neighborhood is called Edison Park, and it's in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. It's known as a strip of dining and nightlife sort of places, taverns, bars, restaurants, A to Z. It's all there. All of your different themes of stuff. Well, this fella, you know, he owns that and he owns some other stuff, and he was remodeling his property in Edison Park and came up with some bathroom doors that were, you know, 3.5 inch thick. And he's like, I need a deadbolt for these, and I need it tomorrow. Okay. Okay. So where are you going to get deadbolts for 3.5 inch thick doors? Well, we can keep on hand Mortise cylinders that are, you know, I forget the length, don't quote me, but, you know, they were 1 3/4, or actually probably 2 inch, and I had 2 inch Mortise cylinders in stock, or I could take standard Mortise cylinders and quickly modify them to go to 2 inch, and boom, they're on the way, no problem at all, because of the modular system that we have here, which is a major tenet or hallmark of why you would use this deadbolt, amongst other things. So that thickness range, yeah, they're thinking standard cylinders, but okay, well, you know, 1 inch, 1 1/8, 1 1/4, 1.5 inches. After 1.5 inches, you can keep getting cylinders, and in fact, I've ordered maybe 4 inch cylinders, or maybe even 6 inch cylinders in the past. So why is that important with this type of lock? Well, not only that you may have an unusual door thickness, you know, maybe just slightly thicker than standard, or you might be installing it in a location in the door that's unusual, meaning in his 3.5 inch door thickness, it happened to be centered in the door. But what if you had, you know, 1 3/4 inch thick door, and then you were applying some sort of a fabric panel to one side, or sound deadening, or some sort of woodwork and treatment where the lock becomes no longer centered in the thickness of what will be the total thickness of the door. So you'd need a really long cylinder on one side and probably a standard length something on the other side. So that makes this really great. And it's modular, meaning off-the-shelf components can be made to use in this. And the cam that it uses on the back of the Mortise cylinder is that standard Adams Wright cam, even though that is not the cam that I use when I do this, because it would be best to use the fantail cam, and I'll show that to you. Solid brass, yeah, I'm not sure what components are solid brass, probably the cylinder collars, and then a 1-inch throw. Okay, let's look at the installation instructions, which are here. Rotate that if necessary to get to where you need it to be. Okay, it's simple and straightforward. The other link here is the template, which we'll go over in a moment. Okay, as we look at the installation instructions here, it becomes, pretty simple and straightforward. So when it comes to drilling the door and frame to receive the lock, I won't cover those details here. Okay, steps 1 through 9 talk about walking through the steps of how to prep the door. If you need assistance in doing that, feel free to call. I will assist walking you through the process of how to prep your steel door, your wood door, your fiberglass door, whatever you're installing this down to. Okay, so half of this page we won't talk about. Now, the installation instructions graphically shows how everything goes together. And it's so simple and straightforward. There is literally no words on the installation instructions telling you what to do. Once you have that hole drilled, and by the way, you can go smaller. You can't drill an 1.5-inch hole, unfortunately. It will go as small as an 1 7/8 diameter hole, but 2 1/8 is the typical hole size. I would absolutely mortise or drill the smaller 1 7/8 if I could, but unfortunately this cylinder housing is too large to fit into anything smaller apparently. I really wish this would be sizable for 1.5 inch. I really wish it would be an 1.5 inch hole, because this could then retrofit into so many other lock sets, Schlage namely, with 1.5 inch holes. But like I had said earlier, the door is prepped, but then you put your cylinder housing in that hole. You push the latch bolt through, and the part that moves goes towards the bottom. It's marked top up at the top here, so nothing to worry about. That slides in, okay? At that point, you're going to take these 2 screws through, either the side that's not tapped, and they will go through the cylinder housing and through the holes on the latch bolts, here and here. That locks all of that assembly together. At that point, you're then going to bring your mortise cylinders, cam cover, as they had said earlier, that goes on the back of this. Okay, whether you're using a keyed cylinder, a thumb turn mortise cylinder, or even a dummy cylinder. Maybe you are replacing a lock and you need to close off one side of it. Maybe you want your deadbolt to be maybe you want a thumb turn one side only and a dummy on the other. Maybe you want a key on one side and a dummy on the other. You could also take this platform and turn it into single cylinder by using a mortise thumb turn. Okay, but you'll always put the cam on the back of those. They're showing the cam cover, I should say. They're showing the fantail cam, which I'll show you in a moment. Your cylinder goes through, your your wave washer, any cylinder collar that you might need. Your cylinder would stick off more further off the face of the door. And the length of the cylinder they're not telling you, but you can. We'll look at the way to build the part number, and it will give you guidance. And then you can also measure your cylinder collar so that you know what it is, and I'll measure that before the end of the video. So once the cylinders are in, you've threaded those in. That Allen wrench goes through the little holes on the edge of the deadbolt, the latch bolt, through the body, and right to the cylinder set screws, and that's how you tighten those. And then you won't be able to rotate these. Then your cover goes on. It's that simple. Okay. There is also a link to the template that's here. This is also in the box. Now, this is not a complete document because it doesn't show the third backset option from Kaba Ilco, which is one of the super cool reasons to use Kaba Ilco, and I'll touch on that in a moment. Edge of the door to the center of your hole, 2 3/8 or 2 3/4. Okay. Then there's also a link to the product brochure or cut sheet that's here. This talks about how we're going to build our part number. Okay, so here's the way the part numbers are built. First of all, just some graphical options that they're showing here, what you can do in terms of cylinders. nothing comes to mind here that they're missing, that's for sure. Dummy cylinders, we had mentioned earlier why you may want a dummy cylinder. You might also want a dummy because you need to fill the hole, and as you're waiting for your permanent cylinder to come, you might have something incredibly unusual. I mentioned ASA earlier. You might be doing, I said ASA earlier. I think I said Obloy. I forget. I meant to say Obloy, a really unusual cylinder. You could get a Brahma Mortise cylinder as well. That's super unusual. Primus by Schlage, Security by Yale, Medico, you name it. If it's a 1 in 5/32 Mortise cylinder, it's going to work in this Kaba platform. Dummy cylinder, 2 thumb turn options, the standard thumb turn and handicap compliant option. Skip over here to option 5, standard cylinder, regular run-of-the-mill Mortise cylinder, interchangeable core. That would be specifically small format, okay? However, when it comes to interchangeable core, you could do anyone's interchangeable core, small format or large format, or if you're Schlage, full size. So you can run removable core or interchangeable core through this. And then there's the good old captive thumb turn. You stick this thumb turn into the cylinder, and it's shown to you upside down, by the way. That will stay a thumb turn until you insert a special tool through this slot to pull that out. Why would you want such a thing? Well, the application that it works for that I think of all the time is you've got a couple, they get married, they start a family. Kids are easy when they aren't mobile, okay? You don't have to be concerned of them crawling or walking away on you when you turn your head for 1/3 of a second. Where I've used this is you want to be able to have a thumb turn on the deadbolt on the front door of your house during normal operation. But there might be times when you want to pull that out and you want to lock the door and then pull that out so that you can't just reach up like a toddler can and pull on the lever with the weight of their body, get the door unlatched. So this will provide you a means by which to control rights and privileges over the deadbolt, making it either thumb turn so anyone can just exit, I wouldn't say it requires special knowledge. You just have to rotate the thumb turn. And then you can pull that out, is the bottom line. This is what a standard single cylinder looks like if you order a single cylinder. It will not come with a collar and then you put a Mortise cylinder into it. It will look like this. You can order a double cylinder and you can run Mortise thumb turns through it, or this captive thumb turn. This is how you build the part number. It's always going to be a 45. Then your function, single, double, or classroom function. Classroom function simply means that you can always throw the bolt on the key side with your key. You can throw it and retract it. On the inside, you can only retract the bolt. You can never throw the bolt. The application there is you have a school bathroom. Someone's in the bathroom. The janitor doesn't realize it, and he locks the bathroom door. But with a classroom style, you can always throw the bolt open, but you can never go in that bathroom and lock the door from the inside. Okay. Now, I had mentioned earlier about the cool back sets. So 2 3/8 and 2 3/4 we talked about, but they also have a 2-inch. That's amazing because that's really useful. I always remember a client called me a number of years ago and said, okay, I've got a pair of 2.0 doors, and they're 10 light each, and they're 4-inch wide styles, and no one has a deadbolt for me. And I said, well, you called the right company because I have exactly what you need. They sold them a Kaba Ilco 2-inch back set, and the client was tickled with the results. Perfect scenario. Then the strike type. What we have here is the standard, just the 03 option. Oh no, what did we do here? Yeah, no, he ordered the heavy duty strike, and that has the reinforcer behind it, the 04. Then the finish, 10B is what we did, but you can see all these other finishes that are available. Cylinder option, the client ordered a 0, so complete deadbolt less the cylinders. Or you can configure it the way that you want. If you want Kaba Ilco to include cylinders, you'll configure it this way. If you want to run your own, you'll go with a 0. Then this is where you're going to specify the cylinder length. We have a 0 here on our part number because there are no cylinders. Forgive me. We have nothing. We don't have a 0. We have 0 after the 0. We have nothing after the 0 because we have no cylinders, and therefore we're not specifying the quantity of pins in the cylinder, nor the keyway, nor the keying. So our part number stops right here. Now, in terms of determining the cylinder length of what you would use, when you use that wave washer, you really have to allow for about 1/8 of an inch in the wave washer. So the way that I like to configure deadbolts, it seems to work for me, is the following way. I'll show you in a moment. Just bear with me if you would. Yeah. So let's do this. Let's switch now to this. What we're going to be looking at specifically is this collar. So what the collar does is okay. Looks like that, right? And your cylinder is going to fit right in this area. It's going to be your mortise cylinder. Yeah, I realize it's way out of scale. That's going to be your mortise cylinder. Your threads, the whole 9 yards. Okay. The bottom line is this area here, from here to here, is 1/4 inch. Okay. That's 1/4 inch. Your wave washer, that wave washer, I'm allowing 1/8 of an inch for that. So you take your door thickness, you add the 1/4 inch you're going to need here, add 1/8 of an inch for your wave washer, and now you're dealing with the length of cylinder that you would need. Okay, so the way that I think of it is as follows. I take my door thickness, I divide that in 2. So let's just say it's 1 3/4 inch thick door. I divide that into 15/16. Okay, so that's going to be, and then I deduct like 1/16 of an inch from that, because in the center of my door, I don't want the back of my tail pieces to be on top of each other. I want to have a small margin between there, and 1/8 of an inch would be plenty. So I take my door thickness, divide it by 2, or you could take your door thickness and take your door thickness, divide it by 2, subtract 1/16 of an inch for your tolerance between the 2 cylinders as they butt to each other like this. You want a small margin in there here. And now you know the length of the cylinder that you would use. The bottom line is, when you get into thicknesses of doors that aren't standard, you're not going to have any problem with a standard cylinder here. And the other thing I didn't tell you, this dimension, the overall dimension, if we're going to make it flush, that's, well, I think I did tell you that to you originally. It's about 5/16. So you can see that this is well, wait a minute. What did I just say? Forgive me, I'm looking at my tape measure. I have to put my better glasses on. That is basically 9/16. Okay, so the thickness is basically 9/16. You're going to lose, 3/8, maybe 5/16 in here, something in that range. So your standard cylinder length, if you're calculating 1 3/4 divided by 2 minus 1/16 of an inch, you're going to need quite a short cylinder. But when you're calculating a 4-inch thick door, you really need to know what's this dimension, what am I going to lose here, so that I can calculate. So 4-inch divided by 2 minus, a 1/16, 1 in 15/16 cylinders. Now you're going to start to think to yourself, okay, what cylinder lengths do I have available to me? So I really need something that's about 1 in 15/16 to make this work. But let's say that you had access to an 1 3/4 cylinder or an 1 5/8 cylinder. You're going to say to yourself, can I make those work? Knowing that this is going to take up about 5/16, okay, plus or minus, and that this is 9/16, you can calculate what you're going to need, okay. I don't recall exactly what I had to put together. I think I had 1 5/8 cylinders. I don't recall what my scenario was, but I may have had 1 3/4 cylinders. It may have been, but knowing these dimensions, you can realize, do I need any blocking rings? Because you would, if you're going to want a blocking ring so that you can fill that area here. So that's just how I calculate what the thickness might be. Okay, so the question becomes: is with a 4-inch thick door. Let's say that I had 1.5 cylinders. Okay, well, there's no way to make that work because they're just not long enough. Let's say that I had, so you've got 1 15/16 would be the cylinder length that you need. The question becomes is if you had 1 3/4 cylinders, could you make that work? Well, the answer is yes, because you've got 9/16, and you've got 5/16 here about, so that's going to leave a 1/4 inch. You're really going to need a 1/16 of an inch cylinder collar. So if you've got 1 3/4 thick cylinders, forgive me, the answer is not yes. 1 3/4 is not going to work at all because we're talking about the door thickness. This is going to sit on top of the door, and 1 3/4 is just not going to work because 1 15/16 isn't the length of the cylinder that you need. It's the dimension from the face of the door down to the center of the lock. So what we're saying here now is, you're going to lose about 5/16, so you're going to need to add to that. And forgive me, earlier I was saying it in reverse. So you're going to really need plus 5/16, maybe 3/8. Okay, so if you had a 2 1/4 inch cylinder, yeah, that would work, and you're going to know exactly where the head of that cylinder is going to fall in play here because you're losing that dimension here. You're losing the height of the cylinder shoulder, the collar shoulder here. Now you could also say to yourself, well, if I had a 2.5 inch cylinder, would that work? Well, you need 1 15/16, and that's going to leave you with 9/16. That means that your cylinder is going to be flush with the face of the collar. You've got about 3/8 there, so you're going to need a 3/16 cylinder collar to fit inside of here. So you've got a little bit of play when it comes to the origination of the cylinders that you require in terms of the length, but that's how I go about thinking what I need to use. And I don't remember the confluence of door thickness and cylinders I used, but it was pulling out the wave washer, and it was getting about 3 threads worth of that cylinder into the lock because the length of the cylinder that we were able to pull off the next day was the maximum length possible that we could pull together the next day, and it worked. But there were only about 3 threads of that cylinder in the lock, and it's a 32 thread per inch ultra fine, and that's been years now, and it's worked splendidly. But I would like to have had a lot more of that cylinder into the cylinder housing. But it's a deadbolt, and on a bathroom door, and I don't know that they're ever locking those doors. They may lock one if someone's in there doing construction, I suppose. I don't know why they had double cylinder deadbolts on those bathroom doors, but that's what the client wanted. So that's the logic I use to go about determining cylinder length. Okay. So that concludes how we build the part number. Now this also is the cut sheet, and will allow you to go through. What it actually is a very old list price, but it allows us to just understand the way it's put together. The last page is component pricing if you needed to buy latch bolts or subcomponents separately. And then there's a nice clean exploded view here that shows single and double cylinder deadbolts. Okay. Key, Mortise cylinder. Now, that cam is not an Adams Right cam. The description says it can take an Adams Right cam or a fantail cam, or a Lorry deadbolt cam. So the Adams Right cam is a number 2 cam, or an 863A from Kaba Ilco. That's what the Adams Right cam is. It will work. I prefer to use the original cam that it was designed to work with, because that's going to have a lot more contact and positive movement of throwing that latch bolt through its entire motion. I want the cam to touch that all the way through the motion so that it positively locks in place. So when you order this with cylinders, I expect they're going to come with Lori Fantail or the Lori Deadbolt cam, the 863R. If you're doing your own, get yourself some Lori cams for your Mortise cylinders. I've never tried it with the 863A. They say it works. It obviously works. But I've always used the one that is pictured and designed with it. Okay. Let's see. I think that pretty much sums up everything about this. I talked about the Deadbolt that I like a lot. The Latch Bolt I like a lot. Again, the projection is very small off the face of the door. My only desire is that it would work in a smaller diameter hole, a crossbore hole through the door. Okay. Now, there's a link here below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Kaba Ilco products that we sell by means of this horizontal navigation here, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to several and many catalogs, whether it be the key blank catalog or the brass cylinder catalog or manuals on key machines or a 1950 Ilco key blank catalog or a 1972 catalog or a article written on positional master keying using Kaba Gemini as the example. Okay, really neat stuff. Let's wrap up this video on camera. So if it seems as if I've come across as an unabashed Kaba Ilco Deadbolt fanboy, it's because that was my intent. I am very partial to this lock platform, and it's because of that 2-inch backset. I love that idea. It's because of the modular concept. It's because I can do weird door thicknesses. When it comes to cylinders, Kaba Ilco cylinders are generally stocked in lengths up to 1.5 inches. After that, I can do Deadbolts, I can do Mortise cylinders from someone like Baldwin. In the world of Baldwin, they routinely deal with thick doors. So 1 5/8, 1 3/4, 2-inch, 2 1/4, longer cylinders, those are generally kept in stock. I can also take a Kaba Ilco cylinder and then add components onto it from major manufacturing, a locksmith security hardware and locksmithing tool manufacturer. They make extensions for cylinders, and with some modification, some drilling and tapping, I can take 1.5 inches and I can add a 1-inch extension to it. They also make 3/4-inch extensions, 1/2-inch extensions. I think I've done, maybe a 1-inch extension in those. I forget, but you can stack those extensions if you've got the right screws. So I can make pretty quickly any length cylinder realistically. So when someone thinks, oh, I've got this thick door and getting a lock on this door is going to be difficult, yeah, it is difficult, because a cylindrical lever or knob lock that's going to be extended for a thick door, that can be a costly proposition depending on the thickness and how it's extended. Getting an off-the-shelf deadbolt to go into a 3.5-inch thick door, the parts, when you look at the deadbolt, well, I need a longer tailpiece and I need longer screws. Okay, we'll source those parts. Okay, sometimes you can't. But when I get that sort of call, Kaba Ilco is it, because the client's not necessarily calling to say, yeah, I'll need it in 8 weeks. No, I should have ordered it last week. So Kaba Ilco solves those problems, and that's why I'm very partial to the platform. And then, of course, it's the exceptional technical support that I get from the cylinder experts over at Kaba Ilco. Just, great support in that department. So if you have any questions on the 45-2-3-04-10B-0 double cylinder deadbolt less cylinders or any other Kaba Ilco product, please feel free to reach out to us. And my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. And thank you. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.